One incident, one ruling. And just like that, a player's World Cup journey comes to an abrupt end. Finished, erased, removed from the remainder of the tournament because of a single FIFA decision. This became the first player eliminated from the 2026 World Cup, not by defeat on the field, but by disciplinary action away from it. And the reason behind that punishment has become one of the most controversial and emotionally charged moments of the entire competition. His name is Assim Madibo. You probably remember the moment, even if you'd rather not. And the path that brought him here has divided football fans, pundits, and former players alike because it has led many people to ask a deeply uncomfortable question. Did FIFA punish the foul, or did FIFA punish the outcome? To understand why that question matters, we need to go back to where it all began. Canada versus Qatar. Vancouver. Canada were cruising toward the first World Cup victory in their history, dismantling Qatar 6-0. Then came the 51st minute. Madibo arrived late from behind on Canada's Ismael Koné. The challenge resulted in a devastating injury, a double fracture of the tibia and fibula. Koné was carried from the pitch on a stretcher. He later underwent surgery, and just like that, his World Cup was over. Canada manager Jesse Marsch later said the snap of the bone could be heard from the touchline. By every description, every replay, and every reaction, it was one of the most horrifying scenes the tournament has produced. Then on Wednesday, FIFA delivered its verdict, a 5-match suspension. Qatar are already out of the competition, which means those 5 matches extend well beyond anything remaining in this World Cup. In practical terms, that decision completely ended Madibo's tournament. The remainder of the suspension will now carry over into matches unrelated to this World Cup. His campaign is finished, and that is exactly where the debate begins, because many people hear the details and immediately think, good, if you break someone's leg, you deserve to be thrown out, and honestly, that's a completely understandable reaction. But this is where things become far more complicated, because when you go back and watch the challenge itself, separate from the horrific injury that followed, the picture becomes less straightforward than many expected. Koné pushed the ball down the line. Madibo arrived a split second late. He caught the back of Koné's leg. It was a poor tackle, mistimed, clumsy, and ill-judged attempt to win a ball that had already gone, but it was not a reckless 2-footed lunge with studs showing, designed to injure someone. There was no obvious malice. It was the type of slightly late challenge that happens repeatedly in football matches every week. The difference is that this one, through terrible luck, connected at precisely the wrong angle and resulted in a broken leg, and the people closest to the incident seem to agree. The referee's initial reaction tells an important story. Christian, you first reached for a yellow card, a yellow. Only after the severity of the injury became apparent. Did the punishment become a red card? Not because replay footage suddenly made the tackle look dramatically worse, but because of what happened afterward. Even Jesse Marsch, understandably emotional in the immediate aftermath, later admitted that he did not believe Madibo intended to cause such a horrific injury. His exact sentiment was simple, I don't fault him for that. Madibo himself looked devastated. He stood on the pitch in tears, with his hands on his head. After the match, he went directly into Canada's dressing room to apologize face to face. Later, he visited Koné in hospital. There is even a photograph showing Koné embracing him. Think about that for a second. The player whose leg was broken hugged the player responsible for breaking. That alone says a great deal about how those directly involved viewed the incident. So now ask yourself the real question. If the referee initially saw yellow, if the injured player embraced him afterward, if the injured player's own manager publicly said he did not blame him, how does that become a 5-game suspension? And this is where the controversy truly begins, because the conclusion many analysts have reached is remarkably simple. FIFA did not punish the tackle. FIFA punished the injury. That single sentence summarizes the entire debate. The length of the suspension appears to be driven primarily by how severe the injury became, rather than by the actual nature of the challenge itself. And that creates a dangerous precedent, because in football, the result of a tackle often depends on circumstances no player can control. The exact same challenge, the same speed, the same timing, the same angle can leave one player rolling around for 30 seconds before continuing normally, or it can leave another facing months of recovery and surgery. If you punish recklessness and intent, you're evaluating the action. If you punish the outcome, you're evaluating fortune or misfortune, and there is evidence supporting that concern. While discussion around Madibo's suspension was still dominating headlines, another incident occurred elsewhere in the tournament. Brazil's Danilo crashed into Scotland's Kieran Tierney with a challenge many observers felt looked equally reckless. If not worse, it was ugly, highly dangerous, yet Tierney immediately got back to his feet. No serious injury, no broken leg. The punishment? A yellow card. Nothing more, is same category of Verlius, completely different consequences and completely different punishment. The only thing that changed was the injury, which leads critics to the same conclusion. FIFA appears to be judging consequences rather than conduct, and that is where the situation becomes even more uncomfortable, because this is also the same governing body that has shown considerable flexibility regarding suspensions when circumstances suited them, remember? Cristiano Ronaldo, he was sent off against Ireland during qualification, and technically should have missed the opening 2 matches of this World Cup. He didn't. Argentina's Nicolas Otamendi and Ecuador's Moises Caicedo also received dismissals in their final qualifying matches and should have carried suspensions into the tournament. Those bans were waived. FIFA's reasoning was straightforward. The organization wanted every nation to compete with its strongest available squad on the biggest stage in men's international football. So, when a superstar or major player risked missing marquee matches, exceptions somehow became possible. But when it came to Madibo, a lower-profile player representing the team already heading toward elimination, a player unlikely to affect the showcase matches FIFA values most, the response was entirely different. 5 matches, no flexibility, no leniency, no compromise. And that is the part many people find hardest to accept, because it creates the impression that FIFA chose an example that was easy to make. Madibo had represented Qatar 64 times internationally before this incident. He had never received a red card for his national team. Also, there was no established history of dangerous conduct, no pattern of violent behavior, no reputation for dirty play. The Athletic directly asked FIFA whether any additional factors contributed to the 5-match suspension. The odd response offered nothing beyond a brief reference to serious foul play, no detailed explanation, no reasoning, no breakdown, just a number that many observers feel was selected to fit the headline rather than the offense. Now, to be fair, let's examine FIFA's strongest argument. The laws of the game define serious foul play as the use of excessive force or brutality, and it is reasonable to argue that if a challenge breaks a player's leg, then excessive force may have been involved. That's a fair point. Maybe the red card was entirely justified. The rulebook already states that serious foul play carries a minimum 2-match suspension. Perhaps you extend that punishment further to emphasize player safety and discourage dangerous tackles. There is a case to be made for that, but 5 matches with no evidence of intent, no disciplinary history, a referee whose first instinct was yellow, and a victim who later embraced him in hospital. At that point, it begins to feel less like justice and more like public relations, which brings us to the final conclusion. A player committed a poor tackle. The outcome was catastrophic. He apologized. He visited the hospital. He received forgiveness from the very player he injured, and FIFA responded by effectively ending his World Cup through a punishment that many believe does not align with its own inconsistent standards. Qatar can still appeal. Many people hope they will. Many hope the suspension is reduced. But, as things currently stand, FIFA has done the one thing a disciplinary system should be most careful to avoid. It punished the result instead of the action. 5 matches for a challenge that ended in disaster. Yellow card for a remarkably similar challenge that simply ended differently. Does that sound like justice? Or does it sound like FIFA responding to a headline? Let me know what you think below. And if you're interested in the side of football stories that most people never stop to examine, you already know where the subscribe button is.